And one thing that's we did was when the northers would come, and we call them northern, when a cold spell would come, well, we'd have hog butchering day. And that was quite an event. That was neighbors would come over and help out, and then next day we'd go over there and help them out. Because you want to do it when it was cold because we didn't have any refrigeration. And we'd start early in the morning. Mom and Dad would fire up the big old kettle out there and heat up the water early in the morning, and we'd go down there, and Daddy just had a homemade old sled that he made with a rope on it. Two people could pull it down there to the hog pen, and then he had the hog picked out, which he's gonna butcher, so he'd throw a little corn in the trough down there, and that hog would come there to eat, and he'd take his .22 rifle and just put it right up to by the hog's head and go, pshing, and the hog would go ka-ching. And so he'd get in there and slit his throat, and then we'd take that hog, and I mean, they were heavy, sometimes 200 pounds, maybe even more. Pull him on that sled. It was always muddy. Hog pens were just full of mud. It was just a muddy, filthy job. But then we'd pull him back up there by that kettle, and that water would be just about simmering, and we'd pour that hot water on that hog, and that's how you scrape the hair off. After you put that hot water on it, it comes off a lot easier. If you did it while it was dry, it's kind of like shaving without any shaving cream or water. It was pretty tough. Put that hot water on there, and we'd turn him over and put hot water on there and just scrape him, and then we'd take him over there, and we had a live oak tree there, and just cut a slit in each one of his back feet there, and hooked this single tree, which had two hooks on it, which is the same thing you use for plowing with your horses, and had a block and tackle, throw it over the limb, and we'd pull that hog up, and a couple guys would help pull up because he's pretty heavy, and pull him up to where he's about this high off the ground, and then just tie him, and then just would take him and gut him down all the way down and cut his head off, and then they would go in and start cutting the bacon out and the hams and start cutting things, and then my dad would usually go to town that day before and buy a little bit of beef, and so we would ground up beef, and so then we would take like the parts of the hog and mix it with the beef in a tub, and put seasoning and pepper and salt, and we had this grinder, and we would stuff that meat down and then churn it, and then it would force it out, and then you'd have this spout coming out of the end, and you'd have you could make sausage. And we didn't have any, we call them casings, to put the sausage. I mean, put the meat in. We took the intestines out of the hogs, and we would reverse them. In other words, we'd pour water down there and just reverse them out, and then we would lay them out on a table, and we would scrape all that stuff that was built up from the inside of the intestine, and scrape as much off as we could. And that's where we put that in, and we'd cut it in slices maybe a foot long or so, and then we would put it on that tube and start grinding, forcing that in there, and then when that section got filled up, well, then we'd take a string and tie it on this end, and come over and tie on this end, and we'd have our sausage hanging on this string. And And then Mom would keep that, put excuse me, more water in there and get that real hot. And she would put lye in there, and then we would take a lot of the fat from the hog, and we'd throw it in there and boil that with that lye, or make it, I guess it would boil, and after the fire went down, it would cool down, and it would turn out almost like Crisco. It was solid. It wasn't, I mean, it was soft, but it was solid. Where it didn't run. I mean, you could. So then we would take a long knife and just cut slices out of it like that, and that's what we used for washing clothes mostly. And I guarantee you one thing: if you had dandruff, you used that lye soap one time, you would not have dandruff again. No, I don't. Some people did use it, but anyway. And then we would take the ears and the tail and the tongue and I don't know what else, miscellaneous, and we'd grind it up. We'd make that liverwurst. We'd do the same thing, but it was just those things. That stuff was very greasy, and but I liked it. It was very good. You'd kind of bake it where the other sausage, sometimes you could bake it, or you could probably put it in water and kind of bring it to a slow boil and cook it that way. But liverwurst, we'd use the thicker intestines, and you'd kind of bake it. I know this sounds weird, but bake it and then put homemade molasses, open it up and put homemade molasses on it, and good old piece of bread and with homemade butter. Oh my gosh, that was pretty darn good. And this is not going to sit well with you, but we'd take the brains and eggs and make scrambled eggs and brains. We'd have that be our meal usually that night before they would spoil. We did that. Anyway, that was kind of the hog killing days, and we would put a lot of it, the stuff that we would put it in a brine. It would be a crock jar made of like ceramic crock jar, heavy jars, about 5 gallons, and you'd put this brine, and it was like a preservative. I mean, it's kind of, well, anyhow, it's kind of like a preservative. It's real salty. In other words, you'd put that meat in there, and you would store it in there to keep it from spoiling. The stuff we didn't use up right away, and do that, and that was our hog killing day. And chickens, of course, we had chickens. We laid eggs, of course, we had eggs, and we'd have chicken to eat. Well, Mom had first thing you do, you get a chicken hook. And it was just a long piece of wire and had a hook around it, had a little bend, and you'd pick out a chicken that you want, and you just slide it over there and catch that chicken by the leg and just pull that chicken over to you. And then Mom had a stump over there beside the house there, and had a hatchet stuck in that wood in that stump, and lay that chicken's head across the deal there and just go ka-chum. Head went here and the chicken went there. And when they quit kicking, well, then you pick them up and soak them in hot water so you can pull the feathers out. It was a bad odor. Those feathers just didn't smell very good. But anyway, and that was how we got our chicken.